A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. John chapter 6, verses 1 to 15. Passage taken from the Message version of the Bible. After this, Jesus went across the Sea of Galilee. Some call it Tiberias. A huge crowd followed him, attracted by the miracles they had seen him do among the sick. When he got to the other side, he climbed a hill and sat down, surrounded by his disciples. It was nearly time for the feast of Passover, kept annually by the Jews. When Jesus looked out and saw that a large crowd had arrived, he said to Philip, "Where can we buy bread to feed these people?" He said this to stretch Philip's faith. He already knew what he was going to do. Philip answered, 200 silver pieces wouldn't be enough to buy bread for each person to get a piece. One of the disciples, it was Andrew, brother to Simon Peter, said, "There is a little boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But that's a drop in the bucket for a crowd like this." Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." There was a nice carpet of green grass in that place. They sat down, about 5,000 of them. Then Jesus took the bread and, having given thanks, gave it to those who were seated. He did the same with the fish. All ate as much as they wanted. When the people had eaten their fill, he said to his disciples, "Gather the leftovers, so nothing is wasted." They went to work and filled 12 large baskets with leftovers from the 5 barley loaves. The people realized that God was at work among them in what Jesus had just done. They said, "This is the prophet for sure, God's prophet right here in Galilee." Jesus saw that in their enthusiasm they were about to grab him and make him king. So he slipped off and went back up the mountain to be by himself. The Gospel of the Lord. Reflections on the Gospel according to John chapter 6, verses 1 to 15. The problem of food has been one of the most urgent issues for most of humanity throughout history. And we are referring to material hunger. Today's Gospel tells us about Jesus feeding 5,000 men who were probably together with their family, with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, donated by a little boy. There is a danger in trying to understand this miracle literally. As a chronicle, it is improbable. How could 5,000 men and their families go up the mountain to listen to a preacher? And how many hours did it take for the disciples of Jesus to distribute those loaves and fishes to that huge a crowd? And then they picked up the leftovers. Where did they go to look for those 12 baskets? Did they bring it along with them empty? How is it possible that only one child kept the 5 loaves and 2 fish? Often children are the first to eat their food. In short, the evangelist John was not telling us a chronicle of events, but he presented a catechesis page made of biblical images well known to the readers of his community. The evangelist begins his narration with a reference to the Jewish Passover, the event of Exodus. A great multitude followed Jesus because they saw the signs he performed, as it happened with Moses during the Exodus. Moses had led the multitude into the desert, and there they were fed with manna. In the Gospel, Jesus provides the multitude with bread in the deserted place. The miracle of Jesus is not only to feed them, Most importantly, he manages to make that crowd into a family who, sitting together, share a meal. He makes them a brotherhood. In fact, it is the boy who shares his bread that made the miracle. In sharing bread, we begin to care for the well-being of our brothers and sisters. Jesus invites us to give hope to those who are desperate, welcome into our families those who are lonely, and give food to those who are hungry. Some time ago, I have mentioned here about a project called Mother's Meal, which began in India to feed a handful of workers who were stranded far from their homes during the early days of COVID-19 and the subsequent lockdown. Like the little boy's willingness to share his piece of bread saved over 5,000 people at that time. A simple gesture of sharing the meal now is spread over many countries where tens of thousands of poor are fed. Multiplication of bread still happens, and we have a mission to feed the hungry. Do I share this desire to initiate the miracle and share the mission to end the hunger of those around me?